Hello everyone, Jay Warden here, and welcome to my recap and review of the episode We'll Always Have Paris. Another messy, mediocre episode that can't decide if it's a love quadrangle or a time-bending story. Don't forget those spoilers, otherwise, enjoy. The Enterprise is currently on its way to get some much needed R&R for the crew, with Picard getting a head start by doing some fencing, when suddenly some weird shit starts happening as he experiences a Matrix-style deja vu moment. On the bridge, everyone is confused, as it seems a moment in time was repeated for everyone on board when they receive a distress call from a chap called Dr. Paul Mannheim, and suddenly it seems to click into place because this guy is famous for doing experiments with non-linear time, and it looks like he may have had some success. Picard gives us some background on the guy, but it also seems it's touched a bit of a personal nerve with him, and as he heads off to change back into his uniform, Joy decides to unwelcomely butt her nose into his business, where he humours her briefly before politely telling her thanks but please fuck off now. Still, he decides to indulge himself a little, and after changing, goes to the holodeck and recreates a lovely warm spring day at a cafe in Paris, where he reminisces about a rendezvous he was supposed to have with someone he cared about, flirts with a hot young hollow Parisian before quickly becoming irritated at his self-indulgence, so exits the holodeck without turning it off and returns to the bridge. Riker meanwhile reports that the deja vu time loop they experienced was not limited to just the ship, but felt throughout the entire sector, and while they arrive at the coordinates specified in the distress signal, they only find a relay station giving them another set of coordinates to a very remote area of space, so they follow the trail of breadcrumbs until finally arriving at their destination, a tiny planetoid called Vandor 4. A scan shows a small facility with a force field protecting it, so Picard gives it a call, and a woman's voice answers pleading for help for her and one other, and after getting her to deactivate the force field, manages to beam them both up to sickbay and then heads down himself along with Riker and Data. In sickbay, the woman and a man having convulsions are beamed in when Picard walks in and makes his presence known. The woman seemingly recognises Picard immediately and seems quite pleased to see him charged to her rescue, clearly making Dr. Beverly a little jealous. As everyone says hello, the woman is introduced as Janice Mannheim, the chap being her husband, the aforementioned Paul Mannheim. They have a sit down and chat about what's going on, and Janice explains that a few weeks ago, an experiment regarding the nature of time and multiple dimensions went horribly wrong, and killed all the other scientists at the facility, with only her surviving thanks to precautions taken by Mannheim to keep her safe, and though he tried similar precautions with the others, it was clearly insufficient. She further explains he would have never knowingly put her or the others in danger, but as is often the case with scientists on TV, he became more and more obsessed with his work the closer he got to attaining his goal, which probably clouded his judgment. She then gets a little personal and praises Picard on how his career turned out, just in time for Dr. Beverly to eavesdrop in and look even more jealous. But Picard is feeling a bit uncomfortable about all this talk in front of his officers and quickly brings the conversation back to the original topic. He wants to send a team down to find out what's going on, but Janice says he can't because it's too dangerous. And then Dr. Beverly finally reveals her presence and delivers her report, explaining though she's not sure what's going on, she thinks that Mannheim may die in the next 2 days if they can't figure it out soon. As Picard, Riker and Data have a chat in the turbolift, some more spooky shit starts happening as they encounter themselves in the past a few seconds ago, then end up becoming their past selves, and it's all very confusing. Data explains that the Mannheim effect, as he now calls it, is becoming more pronounced, and its effects are being felt further and further away the worse the situation gets. Later, a further scan of the planetoid reveals an immense amount of energy emanating from Mannheim's remaining lab, though they can't determine what's going on inside. Despite the danger presented by the defences in the lab, Picard orders Riker to take an away team down to investigate, but as Riker and company are beamed down, they are unable to materialise inside and unluckily return to the ship before their patterns are lost permanently. As Picard arrives in sickbay with Data and Troy, Mannheim finally wakes up and starts babbling incoherently. He eventually manages to explain that while he's currently floating between dimensions right now, that due to the unique properties of the planetoid and the pulsar they're orbiting, the energy interactions with their experiments allowed them to open a crack into another dimension, causing a fracture in the space-time continuum, and unfortunately the effects they're experiencing are only going to get much worse. So he provides them with the necessary info to get past and deactivate the lab's defences. In the conference room, Data explains that with the information provided, he believes they can repair the damage done as long as it's timed perfectly to coincide with the next time distortion. So Picard makes it so, and then the old flame Janice walks in and they have a private chat about what happened between them all those years ago. It seemed they were supposed to meet at a cafe in Paris, and Picard stood her up, instead having just graduated from the academy and heading off to his first assignment, fearing that staying with her would have made him boring and ordinary, instead of being the star in his own TV show. As Troy continues to try and be a nosy fucker, annoying both Dr. Beverly and the audience, Mannheim requests to speak to Picard in private, and lets him know that he knows of the history between him and Janice, and if he's going to die, to make sure that she's well taken care of, but regrets having neglected her needs in place of his work and thinks she deserves better anyway. Picard says he'll see what he can do, but tells Mannheim he underestimates her, as he once did all those years ago, and then has a quick chat with Data saying that because he seems relatively unaffected by the time distortions and doesn't want anyone else distracted at a critical moment, only Data will beam down to try and fix the problem. So Data heads down and with the info provided by Mannheim is able to safely arrive this time, and after fighting past some still active defences, makes his way into the lab where he discovers the dimensional crack. After collecting an antimatter container and getting a countdown ready from the forge, he places the container in the crack, and again we're treated to some funky time distortions with 3 copies of Data arguing with each other about who is the real version, but nonetheless continue to push the container into the crack and successfully close it. With the day saved, Mannheim is now feeling much better and back to his normal self, telling Janice that they have to continue the work in memory of all those who lost their lives, which sounds very exciting for a wife who feels a little neglected from time to time. Picard meanwhile arranges a proper goodbye this time, once again recreating the cafe in Paris, and invites her along to share a glass of champagne before sending the ship off to get some much needed R&R. Well, another average episode at best, and I honestly don't have a huge amount to say on this one. We do have some good character stuff with Picard at least, and this is TNG's first foray into time travel, or at the very least time manipulation. But apart from a couple of cool moments, it's rather generic and simple, considering the serious implications it tries to sell to us, and after giving Troy significant praise in the previous episode, in this one we flipped the other way into please fuck off now. Oh yeah, and there's also a love quadrangle too. If it feels like this episode's a bit all over the place, then you'd be right, because the Writers' Guild strike of 1988 happened and the episode script was left unfinished during the time of filming, so the producers had to write something themselves to finish it off. The biggest problem with this episode is that it just feels very inconsequential, and nothing much really happens, making everything feel rather flat and forgettable. So let's start with the time stuff first. I really love the concept, a crack in the fabric of the universe that leads to other dimensions. It's staple sci-fi stuff that can lead to all sorts of cool ideas or settings if you let your imagination run wild. But here it's pretty much limited to a few deja vu-like moments with time repeating itself briefly, and that's pretty much it. The episode tries to imply this is having serious repercussions hundreds of light years away and that it will only get worse, but I never once really felt the stakes were that high, and so I was never sold on the danger the dimensional crack supposedly represented. My favourite moment though is when Picard, Riker and Data walk into a turbo lift, discussing the situation, then the doors open and see themselves for a few seconds in the past having the same conversation about to walk into the turbo lift before shifting them back into that perspective as if they never entered the turbo lift at all, but still remembering what just happened. It's a simple trick but really well done and quite creepy too, and I really wish the episode had done more cool stuff like this. But we only really get to see this sort of pronounced effect once more when Data is trying to repair the crack, when he splits into 3 versions of himself at different moments in time, and in that instance it's not quite as cool. I also really didn't like how they pretty much let Mannheim off scot-free at the end, and allow him to just continue his experiments despite the potential galactic danger he just caused, as well as the deaths of his entire science team. Do you not have to face the consequences of your actions in the future if you're a brilliant scientist, or did Picard just not want to anger his old girlfriend? The somewhat more interesting stuff here is the insight into Picard's youth and how he dealt with Janice. I think Michelle Phillips and Patrick Stewart has some good chemistry here and managed to sell the fact that these two were heavily involved with each other many years ago quite well, especially when she confronts him in the conference room about what happened between them back in the past. Generally, I like how it shows Picard's softer side here, and I also like seeing how uncomfortable he is dealing with this stuff in front of his crew, whilst everyone else seems utterly fascinated at seeing a side of Picard they've never seen before. Picard has a certain image he wants to project as the captain, and this kind of thing is something he feels undermines that image. I also enjoyed his annoyance at his own self-indulgence when reminiscing in the cafe to the young hollow Parisian lady. Of less interest to me is Crusher's jealousy. Okay, I know season 1 has been teasing us a few times now that there's an underlying romantic interest between the two, though maybe more from Crusher's side than Picard's, but I always felt the show was trying to force that upon us. It never felt earned. I only bought this better later on in the series because it establishes the two have a good, solid friendship and their relationship grows from that, which felt a lot more natural to me. So really I just felt Crusher was being a little unprofessional about it all. The most irritating thing here was Troy butting her head into their personal lives. At no point is either one of their judgments being severely affected by the situation, so when she speaks to both Picard and Crusher about it, they appropriately tell her thanks, but please fuck off, it's none of your business, and rightly so in my opinion. And that's it. I really don't have anything else more to say on this one. It's just there as episodes go. very unremarkable, very flat, not terrible, just... So I'm sorry if this is a pretty short review. Next time, nefarious things are afoot at Starfleet headquarters involving pink rubber cockroaches and exploding heads in the episode Conspiracy. Please feel free to leave any comments or feedback, and if you liked this episode then please do like, subscribe and share. This has been Jay Warden, signing off.